Well, we're back walking without Walt again this week. And as it happens, walking without Paradise Pier.
Yeah.
So things go away.
Things change.
But one of the things they did for Paradise Pier, and I have no idea how much of this is going to survive now with the redesigning of Paradise Pier, but since they were doing a turn of the 20th century amusement pier as a theme for that area, they wanted to recreate some of the old original rides from the 1890s and early 20th century. Most notably for me, a Traver Swing.
Oh, those are fun.
They're really neat. And if you don't know what a Traver Swing is, we'll explain that to you. And also they built a Wonder Wheel, which is a type of Ferris wheel, if you will. The original one was at Coney Island, and then they were all over the place, but they built one of those there. And so some of these rides are recreated old antique rides. And so we want to revisit why they did that and how they did it and what these original rides actually looked like. So check this out. So we're still screwing around at Paradise Pier.
Isn't this fun?
Which isn't Paradise Pier anymore.
I guess not.
It's Pixar Pier, whatever that means. And I don't know if they're getting rid of all of this 19th century look. But Disney is Disney, and Disney does what Disney does.
Forever changing.
Yeah, no kidding. But they have their own Disney aesthetic, and oddly enough, Paradise Pier has never really been part of a Disney aesthetic. It looks like a 19th to 20th century amusement park, or an amusement pier, really.
I really have fond memories of Paradise Pier being just like this. My daughter and I were here in 2013, and it was just a magical time then, since she always wanted to go to Disneyland as a real little girl.
And for me, the aesthetic of this turn-of-the-century amusement pier has just been really exciting. I've always had a fond love of these old-school amusement parks and amusement piers. And they opted to build a couple of rides here, as opposed to just buying them, that look like old amusement pier rides like this one. It's a Traver Swing. Do you remember these Traver Swings? They used to pop up all over the place.
Oh yes, every carnival, every amusement park.
These were everywhere. There were hundreds of them all over the planet. You would go to China and find one of these things. The later ones all had sort of a science fiction theme to them. Stainless steel rocket ships, very 1930s. And you would climb in here like Flash Gordon and blast off to the planet Mongo. But it's hard to even think about these old-time amusement parks and not immediately think of a Traver Swing, even though most people have no idea who Harry Traver was or his great invention, the swing. In the 1800s, as a young man, he wanted to build roller coasters, because who wouldn't want to build roller coasters?
They're fun.
But he just couldn't raise the money to put together a roller coaster company. So he decided that a circle swing, which was a ride that had been around forever, rumor has it that it was the very first amusement park ride ever, and he figured, well, he can raise the money to build circle swings. So he went to work designing his own variant of a circle swing, and he thought it would be fun if the riders rode in boats. Little wood boats with sort of an Italian flair to them, and they would feel like they're flying in some sort of magical flying machine in their magical flying Italian boat. I think part of his success was that not only were these cheap for him to build, they were cheap for amusement parks to buy. So orders just started flooding in. He couldn't build these things fast enough, and people loved them. They'd climb in their little wood boat. The very first one, as I understand, popped up at Coney Island, which is pretty typical of American rides.
Hang on to your hat.
Boy, people back then got all dressed up even to go to Coney Island.
They sure did.
But you can tell they're just A, terrified, and B, thrilled to be flying through the air in their little gondola boat. And at Coney Island, people certainly had plenty of rides to choose from, but this thing was amazingly popular, and the amusement park had spent practically nothing on it. So talk about a win-win situation.
What a time to be living in.
time travel would be so fun.
It sure would.
And that's sort of what they attempted to do at Paradise Pier, take you right back to this era. But eras run out, don't they? And Harry Traver found that people didn't want to fly around in magical boats after a while. And after World War I, everybody wanted to go for a ride in an airplane and
No
go quote,
kidding.
barnstorming.
Yes.
And so he said, I'm going to build airplanes and hang those from the rides, and I can resell rides to all of the parks I've already sold them to, because everybody's going to have to buy an airplane now. So he built all these little biplanes and hung those on the swings. And again, it was a huge success, except they couldn't go nearly as high, because the slightest gust of wind, and these things did what airplanes do. They headed for Cincinnati. So it wasn't exactly a grand idea, and it didn't last very long. Isn't this thing fun?
Oh, I remember these rides.
Aren't they? This is a ball. Here again, somebody got the idea to hang airplanes from a little miniature swing. These are just pedal cars. This is one of those rides at Liberty Park that we did the show about.
Those are so much fun.
And by the 1930s, wooden biplanes had become pretty passé, and everybody wanted to go for a ride in a spaceship.
Oh, boy.
You know, we had Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, and the world had just suddenly gone science fiction happy. And Buck Rogers was probably the big motivating factor. It was a cartoon that had come out in the very late 1920s. And by the mid-1930s, everyone wanted to blast off in a rocket ship to outer space. You know, Buck Rogers has been amazingly successful. It's been in continuous production since 1929. And so, of course, Harry Traver wanted to cash in on the fad and came up with the idea of replacing the little wooden biplanes with stainless steel rocket ships. And they'd be much more stable and less likely to blow away in a high wind. So almost overnight, every amusement park that had a Traver Swing was ordering new rocket ships for their swing. Because these things were just everywhere, each park was trying to come up with some system to individualize their rocket and to make it look a little less like an oil derrick. So you see all these fun coverings that they put on the towers out in the middle to try to dress that up a bit and make it look a little more fun. For various reasons, a lot of the amusement parks later gave up on these coverings for the tower. Kind of unnecessary, and the key is they're just really, really fun to ride.
They are.
I think the real key is that wind-in-your-face sense of actually flying.
It's fun. I like it.
Remember this amusement park? It closed when you were just born, but it survived for a while and burned down in the 1970s. This is the old Salt Air Resort.
I saw it after it was burned down.
Oh, tragic. But notice they had a Traver Swing. It didn't run for years before the park closed. Maybe that's why the park closed. They quit running their Traver Swing. But here's just a chair version of a circle swing, also from Salt Air. And this one's back in Liberty Park. But it's fun that you can go ride this 19th century swing ride to this day in Salt Lake City.
Just hang on.
Oh my heck, I practically threw up. I mean, this thing really is a handful because you twist around and you're facing the ground and then you're facing the sky and oh my heck, this thing's a handful. And so here's Salt Lake City's other big amusement park. It's actually in Farmington, just nearby. And you can see that they had a Traver Swing going out over their lake, which was originally set up with the biplanes, and that didn't last long at all. And they very quickly switched this whole thing out for the stainless steel spaceships. And so, of course, you're not going to find anybody that grew up on the Wasatch Front that didn't ride in these stainless steel spaceships at Lagoon.
Right.
You and I both rode them.
Oh, sure.
I love these. This was
fun.
one of my favorite rides at Lagoon. My friends all thought it was way too passé. Got to ride the roller coaster, but I just loved this. I really felt like you were flying out over the lake, and it was exciting. Of course, in later years, the poor thing started falling apart, and they closed it in the 1990s. By the 1990s, pretty much all of these things had been dismantled and they were just gone.
Yeah.
Lagoon replaced theirs with one of these, a Beston Wave Swinger. Beston makes all of these rides in China, of course. And here at Paradise Pier, they've got probably a dozen Beston rides, including a Beston Wave Swinger, the thing that really replaced all of the Traver Swings. And they've got it sitting right next to their Traver Swing, which I felt was a little inappropriate. I just love the original rides. But these Chinese rides are a lot of fun.
Plus stable.
Very stable, very safe. And again, you really feel like you're flying. Disney's Traver Swing is equally stable and safe. It's kind of a recreation of this particular swing ride, the one at Kennywood Park. Probably the best known of all the Traver Swings. Disney's duplicated the starburst patterns that were there at Kennywood Park. It's the only swing ride that I've seen that have those. If you compare the two, you'll notice that Disney's is substantially larger, heavier, and just safer too. It's all computer controlled with all manner of safety devices. It constantly monitors the wind speed and direction and has emergency shutdown brakes that can bring the thing to a safe and sane halt almost immediately. In spite of all that, it's just like climbing into an old Traver Swing.
You get to fly through the air, and it's just a lot of fun.
We've both ridden the old ride at Lagoon, and now this one at California Adventure.
Just the same, really.
It feels the same, looks the same. It's just a lot of fun.
Except this is Disney.
Which is to say, it's way more Mickey Mouse. And it's not only fun to ride, it just looks really neat. It's fun to watch.
I love to watch the people in the ride waving at everybody going by or hanging on to their hat.
And it looks like an old amusement park because it has this iconic ride. You would expect to see this at Coney Island. You would expect to see this at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk.
Plus it's rockets.
It's rockets. It's science fiction. And it's just... the whole thing is just so American.
It is.
So iconically American amusement park. It's just really, really, really cool. The original rides, you frankly ran the risk of getting a splinter in your butt.
Ouch!
Not with these. These are so comfortable and roomy inside. These also have seat belts, where the original ones you were just kind of on your own to
hang on to your hat.
Hang on to your hat and go for it. But this is just fun to ride, very comfortable. You're not dizzy or you don't feel like you're going to throw up or anything
no,
at the
just
end of this
relaxed.
ride.
It's just fun.
It's a very relaxing ride. You could stay on it all day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other early 20th century ride they decided to recreate here is called a Wonder Wheel. They call it Mickey's Fun Wheel. It's always been painted with the early Disney characters, Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, Pluto, Donald.
Which we grew up on.
And all of these cars are now being re-themed with Pixar characters.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure which of the Pixar characters. Kind of sad to see the old guys going away, but as an old guy, I guess eventually you just sort of end up old and in the way. You end up being replaced by a computer-generated character. Wow, we're way up here now. This is the pinnacle of our success.
Yes.
When Charles Herman invented the Wonder Wheel, he said it was a combination of a Ferris wheel, a Shoot-the-Chutes, which was sort of a log flume ride, and a scenic railway, which was a popular brand of roller coaster at the time.
None of which makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I think he was just calling out the most popular rides of the day and saying it's just like them. It's like Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name is marketing. Whatever, the addition of the swinging cars really added a new dimension to the Ferris wheel.
Sure does.
So Charles Herman built the first one for, of course, where else? Coney Island in 1920. The big innovation here was making half the cars so that they rode on a track, very much like a roller coaster track, and they could roll in toward the middle, and then they could roll back out toward the outside edge.
But the stationary ones get to go clear to the top and not slide.
Yeah, the other ones, the swinging cars, never go that high. They're always stuck in toward the middle of the wheel. But on a Wonder Wheel, you get to pick the kind of car you want to ride in, the fixed car or the swinging car. The first Ferris wheel first showed up at the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893, sort of a World's Fair, and George Washington Ferris from a little town near Chicago built the darn thing for this exposition in Chicago. As it was going together, people were saying, "Are you nuts? I wouldn't ride on that thing if you paid me." This was actually made considerably worse when they first fired it up. On the first day, people all over Chicago thought dinosaurs had come back from extinction.
Oh, no!
It made some really horrible metal grinding sounds. But, well, they worked the bugs out of it, and people started actually riding it, and it turned out to be hugely popular. It's hard to imagine from these really early pictures, but the thing was designed to be sort of modular so they could take it apart and move it to other World's Fairs.
Look at the size of those cars.
Which makes it hard to imagine that they could just pack that thing up and move it. But this entire exposition was designed to be torn down after 2 years. It doesn't look like something temporary. It's just really hard to imagine, but this whole thing was designed to stand for about 2 years and then just get torn down. So Ferris designed his wheel so that he could take it apart and then move it to the next World's Fair, which was going to be held in Paris. But the Ferris wheel became the icon of the exposition. People all over the world heard about it, and everyone wanted to go for a ride on it. So true to his word, Ferris removed the wheel from Chicago and took it to the Exposition Universelle of 1900 in Paris, France. Of course, the wheel was the hit of the fair again.
The Eiffel Tower was built in 1889 for one of these expositions.
Of course, it was still here in 1900 for this exposition, in spite of the fact that it was supposed to be torn down after 2 years. Fortunately, it never was. So Mickey's Fun Wheel has a lot of heritage, and I don't think it's going to be Mickey's Fun Wheel anymore, but whatever Disney does, I'm sure it's going to be cool.
I can't wait to go back.
Well, it's so neat that they've gone to all the trouble of creating these turn of the century, and by that I mean turn of the 19th to 20th century.
Yes, not the old century,
not yet.
Today.
Building something that looks like an old Coney Island roller coaster, something that looks and functions exactly like a Traver Swing.
Yes.
Something that looks and feels and operates just exactly like a Wonder Wheel.
Right.
And that's just so cool.
Well, it's cool for today's kids so they can go and experience all of that normally they wouldn't be able to experience ever. Be a story that their parents told them.
Well, I think that there are, as I understand it, 2 surviving Traver Swings, but I'm not even sure they still operate. All those Traver Swings that were all over the world, I think there's only 2 operating examples left, and now because of California Adventure, another one, and a brand new computerized one that's perfectly safe and you can get parts for. So that's just really neat. The Traver Swing, when you get right down to it, is such a part of our society and our history.
Right.
You can, there's even that, you've got that tin toy.
Yes.
And it's a Traver Swing.
It is. Rocket ships.
But the toy rocket, the tin toy rocket, is really part of our sort of national psyche, that Buck Rogers rocket. Not the real NASA functional
the
rocket,
toy
but the toy rocket.
The Acme rocket from Roadrunner.
Yeah.
And the little space Martian, on the cartoons, and his rocket.
But that's so neat that icon, I mean, that's why I decided to use it for the channel's logo, is a tin toy rocket, because they're just neat. Well, the key to a Traver Swing was that it really made you feel like you were flying, either originally in a boat, or later on in a biplane, or later on still in a spaceship.
Yes.
But you really felt like you were flying.
Right, or parachuting.
And you still do.
Yeah,
You ride the Zephyr at California Adventure, and you climb in the spaceship and blast off, and you really feel like you're flying. Yeah. You really feel like you're flying, and that's really cool. It's kind of neat too that from that era, that early 20th century era, when Ferris was building his fabulous wheels, and before the Wonder Wheel ever came along, it's like, boy, would I like to see an actual Ferris wheel. The aesthetics of those really early wheels, the Ferris style wheels. And they're gone to history, but not quite. One survives.
Really?
There's one wheel left. It wasn't built by Ferris, but it follows his exact design, and it's in Vienna.
Really?
Vienna, Austria, and I would sure love to go ride that wheel.
That would be great.
It'd be so neat just to see it. But it's kind of cool that one of those really early 120-year-old wheels has survived and still exists.
Yes.
And so we should get to Vienna and ride that wheel.
Right.
We'll add that to our ponderous bucket list.
Oh, it is a ponderous one, but we'll schedule it sometime. We'll just do it.
We'll just do it. That's the way we tend to do things.
Right.
We say, hey, what are we doing today? Let's go to Vienna and ride the Ferris. Literally.
Well, we've done some crazy stuff like that before. Just get up in the morning and next thing you know, we're in California.
Keep our passport current, because you just never know. And we just do stuff like that. So we should go to Vienna and ride the wheel, and that would just be cool.
Right.
And what you should do is go over to the channel and binge watch some of this crazy stuff when we've just packed up, and even if all we're doing is going out in the backyard and playing with a garden train or something.
Right.
There's, I think, over 250 movies
like
on the channel, something like that.
An astronomical amount.
There's all kinds of weird, wonderful, fun things to watch. So head on over to the channel and binge watch the crap out of it. And if you see something that you think your friends would like to see, tell them about it.
Yes.
Send them over to the channel.
They might even want to go out and try it. We will say, try this at home.
Pack a bag and head for Vienna.
Exactly.
And while you're there, have a sausage.
Have a
Vienna sausage. Anyway, but we're going to go ride the wheel. And you're going to check out the channel. And when you check out the channel, you want to subscribe, because if you subscribe and then you click on the little button next to the subscribe thing, there's a little bell, and that will send you a text message whenever we upload something. So that's cool, notifications. But you do want to be a subscriber. And you can get to the channel and you can subscribe by clicking on the blue button. Zoink! You see the blue button down here? If not, some devices don't support it, and some phones you have to turn them, and then suddenly the button appears. Anyway, zoink, the button right down here, blue button, says subscribe, makes you a subscriber. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Tuesday with The Collector's Attic. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.